This is the motherfucking Work for It Europe podcast.
Episode gazillion and 2. What's going on?
Hey guys, good evening.
We've got Albert and Matt is here with us again, and Mr. Coy Baker.
What's up, guys? It's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us.
How's life at Baker Forge?
Getting nice and toasty. It's warm outside, which means the shop's getting hot again these days. We, of course, were just in winter, and it was nice to be able to walk inside and it be warm. But now it's just hot, so it's time to
Sweaty
kick on the
balls
fans.
Yep.
Yeah, no kidding. So it's getting warm, but we're settled into the new space and we're rocking and rolling. We're just making steel, making Damascus day in, day out. It's the name of the game. So. Yeah, things are going well right now.
Nice. We have our own Damascus maker on this podcast.
Oh yeah, who's that?
Matt.
Albert? Yeah. That's not me.
Yeah. But not on your scale, of course. We are just a small shop with two bladesmiths.
Oh, right on. Right on. Is it just carbon Damascus or stainless too? Or
Stainless too, but mostly carbon. Carbon steel Damascus. Yeah.
nice. I've been trying to get into doing the stainless Damascus, like actual solid stainless. I've been tooling up to kind of play around with that. Kind of need to get it an argon purge system set up first, but that's in the works.
That would have been my first question, actually.
Yeah.
Whether or not you have any plans for stainless Damascus.
I do have plans for it, and I'm hoping to get into it this year. I actually was putting together some tubing and stuff out there earlier, just to be able to set up canisters with argon flow in them to keep the oxygen out, just to run some trials and tests. I think long term we're probably going to go for a actual what do they call those things? Those hot centering furnaces where it's got a hydraulic press inside of a furnace, and then you've got you can purge and pull a vacuum on the chamber as well. I think that'd be a lot faster for doing stainless on a production level, but for now we'll do it one can at a time.
There's an actual machine that has a press inside of the oven?
Yeah, it's got a chamber, and then the rams, there's an upper and lower ram that actually pass into the middle of the chamber, and you can set hydraulic pressures on a stack of canisters or billets, all while it's heating up to a very precise temperature or a temperature routine, and you can pull a vacuum on the chamber and purge the system so there's no air inside, no oxygen.
So how long? Like, is it just for the welds to set, right? And then.
Yeah, it's just to homogenize the block, basically. You can't do any forging in and out of it. Because then once the cycle's run and everything's fused, it then has to, cool down before you can get into it, open it up and whatnot. So we've been talking to a couple of companies about these machines. The problem is they're like $500,000 machines, so they're expensive.
Holy fuck.
But they're super cool, and they would also work with the copper stuff. They'd work... we could do all kinds of stuff in there. Basically, you can perfectly diffusion bond or forge weld anything in these containers. And when you pull the billets out, there's no scale. It's 100% perfectly clean steel.
Does it work with gas, or is it an electrical forge then?
I think both of them. So there's a couple of different models. I know most of them were running off of gas. However, one of them, and I'm trying to remember the name of the company, it's evading me, but one of them, it actually uses an electrical charge to charge the hydraulic rams. So the rams are actually imparting the heat through electrical current, kind of like you would see in a, what are those little coil
like
forges?
An induction coil.
Like an induction coil, yes. But it would come through the rams and would heat your plates with your material on it through induction of the rams themselves, which was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But very high tech, and these things are massive.
But they're not designed for like billet making and stuff, right?
They have a lot of use cases. Most of it is aerospace industry stuff.
Yeah, I figured.
Yeah, where people are putting parts together in a very particular controlled environment to very specific dimensions, and they need the size of the material to not change, aka it not scale up. So no, I don't think I've ever seen one of these in a knife maker or a blacksmith shop by any means, but the cycle times are really what was intriguing to me, because the chambers aren't all that big. I mean, they custom make them to whatever size you need. But to do a whole stack of billets, we could probably fit on the large size about 12 to 15 stacks in there. But the cycle time on the centering diffusion is about an hour from heat, fusion, and cool. 1 hour.
Oh, wow.
So that was actually a pretty quick turnaround, because we could do a bunch of blocks in a short period of time.
Do you know, like, is there a shop that uses one of those, or would you be the first?
In the blacksmith industry, I think we'd be the first. I don't know of anybody else who has one. I think the closest one to me, I'm on the East Coast of the U.S., and the closest one to me is like a 6.5 hour drive to somebody who actually has one of these, and it's at some factory that's not even related to blacksmithing or bladesmithing. So
that's awesome. You're probably going to make some stuff that doesn't exist yet.
The options are limitless, because even the titanium, the Damascus, those really weird fancy steels, you could easily do that in there too, because it's super clean, oxygen-free environment, and you can precisely go to whatever temp you want and whatever pressures you want. You can do a lot of the powder, like powdered stainlesses. You can do in there, all kinds of cool stuff.
But you're forging blind in there, right? You don't have any view into the press at all?
I think most of them have a. Good question. I don't think you can see into it. No, I mean there's a door, but clearly you can't open it while it's during its cycle. Yeah. So no, I feel like one of them I was looking at had a viewing window, but I think that was only for low temp models. Obviously, the higher temp ones, you can't really just have a piece of glass there. So,
but once you get the process down, you just repeat it.
Right. Yeah, there'd be just a long learning curve of figuring out exactly what pressure, what temperature, how much vacuum you're pulling, what your gas flow is. And then once you nailed your process down, then it was go time and very repeatable. So, but I got to find somebody to give me $500,000 first before that becomes anything.
Now you're going to have Albert looking for one of those machines.
Already. Yeah,
yeah, I think if you just Google hot press furnace, that'll lead you to them. And then the other name for them is the centering diffusion machines. That's centering with an S.
That's definitely the name I would use.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's way fancier.
That's the one that uses the electrical current in the rams to heat everything up, which is fascinating. That's just so cool to me. But they require a lot of power. Lots and lots of power.
But you have that sorted out, right? In the new shop?
Oh, yeah. I've got the power here for it. Some of the biggest models, we'd actually have to put in a step-up transformer, because they were running like 600 or 700 volts on those motors. So the biggest motor I've got right now is on our rolling mill, and it's a 550 hertz, or a volt motor. 550 volts.
That rolling mill looks like a train.
Oh, it is. It basically is. It weighs 20 tons, just the machine. And it's a solid base, and it's almost 16 feet long. It's a monster.
Wow.
But I've yet to find the capacity of how much it can reduce in one pass. Because as long as the material can bite in the rollers, it'll roll it through it.
I would say like challenge accepted, and
I know
go for it.
We do have a video planned where we're gonna just put a whole bunch of shit through the rolling mill and see what it could take, because it's a cold roller, so it can actually roll the steel cold, and that's what it was designed for. And we ran a bunch of mild steel round bar through it, and we took this was right when we first turned it on. We took a 1-inch round bar, mild, cold. We went through it in 3 passes down to 90 thousandths. So,
man, that's like from round bar to plate in one session.
Yeah, Well, basically
God.
sheet steel.
Yeah, sheet steel.
Yeah, and cold, right?
And that was cold. Yeah, didn't even heat that bar up. That was room temperature. Of course, once it came out at the end, it was very hot from all the friction. But
where do you find these machines?
The rolling mill we had a couple of rolling mills, a couple other ones back in the old shop. They were made by a company called Blackfish Industry out of Utah here in the U.S. And they're a combo machine. It has a rolling mill and a hydraulic press in one. And they had just started making them 2 years ago when we were on the market looking for them. And I met them at Blade Show. And we ordered one, and honestly, we just had problems with it. This was kind of I think it was the fourth machine they had actually made. So they were a very new company, and they had a lot of problems to iron out. And once we started down the road of buying the new building, I decided, you know what, it's time to upgrade the rolling mills. They're too much maintenance, they're too much work, and they don't have enough power to roll a piece of steel out in one go. It takes a couple of runs through, and that just wasn't cutting it. So I started searching just a bunch of machine websites where they list machines for sale, old machines and whatnot. And I found a place called Yoder Machinery up in Ohio. It's about 8 hours north of me. And they had a couple of rolling mills for sale there. And one was this big one. And initially from the photos online, I didn't quite realize how big it was. But I sent them a message and said, hey, I'm interested in this rolling mill. They didn't have the price listed. And I was like, so how much is it? Does it work? Is it under power? Can I come see it? And their message back was, hey, yes, it is for sale. FYI, it's massive. And just want to make sure you've actually got space for it before you come up here and look at it. And when they told me how big it was, I was like, wow, that's way more than I need. Appreciate it, guys. Thank you. But I'm looking for something a little smaller than that. And so I dropped it, and I kept looking. And a couple of weeks later, I came back to them because I couldn't find anything else rolling mill related that was the proper size, the proper voltage, what I needed. And so I came back to him and said, all right, I think this is I'm kind of getting pinched into getting this one. Can I come up and see it? So I drove up there, and they had it under power for me. And as soon as I saw it, I realized this is exactly what we need. This is the machine that's going to be in the shop for the next 3-4 decades. And it works flawlessly. We haven't had a single issue with it. And so they hooked us up with it, and it cost me an arm and a leg to get it moved down here and installed. But it came with a transformer, a step-up transformer to step up our 440 three-phase to 550, and it works great. It was probably one of the best investments that we've ever done because the guys can forge a bar on the hammers to approximate thickness and then just run it through that, and it comes out perfect out the other side every single time. All bars are one roll pass. We never have to roll anything twice, so it's very useful.
But it's an old machine, right?
It is. We don't quite know how old it is. It did not come with any paperwork. Yoder Machinery, who we bought it from, they had it for 8 years in that warehouse for sale. And it's been for sale for that entire time, but nobody's had the space to put it in their shop. Yeah. And so it just sat around. It's just sat around up there, which was great for me. I ended up getting it for a pretty good deal because of that. But so it's stamped Canadian Foundries on the frame of the base. And so it came from the Canadian Foundries, which was a company up in Canada who made plate steel and stuff like that. And as far as we can guess, it's somewhere in the 1960s, 1950s is when it was made. But that's kind of a stab in the dark because there's no official paperwork and there's no date stamped on it anywhere. And the company doesn't exist anymore, not as it used to at least. But it did come with two backup rollers. They're basically factory rollers to swap out at some point if the ones in it wear out. And those factory rollers came in the original crates that they shipped them in. It's a very old wooden crates. Yeah.
Very cool.
But they weigh 700 pounds a piece. Each roller does.
Jesus Christ.
So if we ever did have to replace the rollers, it's going to be a hell of a job to replace them. Because
at least you got a forklift that can lift it. No problem.
That is true. That is true. But we were looking at it the other day and figuring out exactly what would have to be taken off and moved around in order to get the rollers out. And it's going to be a job. It's going to be a job. But the rollers that were in it looked practically brand new. Like, I don't know how much they used it, but it didn't look like much because the rollers are, they're almost not a single dent on them anywhere. So.
Nice.
Pretty cool.
But what do you use it for? For the final passes, or do you really use it for, how do you say, to lengthen the billet?
Yeah, so those sort of come hand in hand there. So most of the time, if they're running through a batch and they're making, let's say, a bunch of cladding material that's not going to become final bars, but it needs to be rolled out to a certain size. It's all about the dimension, all about the thickness of the bar. So most of the time they put it through there, it's to get it to a specific thickness. And then that thickness, whether that's a final bar that's then going to get ground and go for sale, or they're making cladding material that's then going to get restacked with cores or other materials later, and they just want it stretched to a certain thickness. Length and thickness come hand in hand. The longer it gets, the thinner it is. So, we all always do math to calculate exactly how much material we need ahead of time, and the guys are pretty good about knowing once it's at 3/8 thick, it will be X amount of length long. So, but yeah, it's all about the thickness, and they'll rough forge everything on the hammers and shape down to the width that they need, and then run it through the roller to tighten up the perfect tolerance on the thickness, and then it just gets straightened and goes to annealing. So
those rollers are big enough that you can put the bar in kind of at an angle and get a little more width out of it too, right?
Well, so it doesn't really work like that, unfortunately. We tried that back in the day. If you put a bar in like that, it actually will turn it into a U, basically, and it really kind of screws it up. If we want to gain more thickness out of it, we try to get all the thickness out of it on the hammers. And so, because naturally, if you're just taking a gentle pass and you're not reducing the bar very much in the rollers, it won't grow widthway as much. But that being said, if you do put a bar in there that's pretty fat, and you're trying to take a big bite at once, it will squish it out sideways a little bit as well. So they can use that. If the bar's slightly undersized on width, they'll take a more aggressive bite and gain that width back. But typically we try to get the width to where we want it on the hammers and then just do a gentle light pass to true up the dimensions.
Interesting.
So you did a drop recently with Apex Ultra as a core. That's one of the steels that Albert pretty much exclusively works with.
Oh, gotcha. Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Were you on the team that actually designed the material?
No.
Oh, okay.
We bought the Apex and we used it, or we have been using it for 1 or 2 years now as a core material with Damascus on the outside.
Yeah.
Which makes for a very nice and very good steel, obviously.
Yes. All of my customers have loved working with the Apex Ultra. In fact, we sold out of that really quickly, and we're waiting to get in on the next batch because that's good stuff. We really like that stuff.
Nice. European made.
Yep.
European. It's good stuff. We like it a lot. So, and it's not easy to get over here, so I can sell a lot of it.
It's not even easy to get over here, so yeah.
I still got a ton of it in stock.
Do you now?
Yeah.
Oh. Coy's gonna slide into your DMs later.
Yeah, I was about to say, we might need to have a side chat. I get asked about Apex Ultra all the time. People are ready for it to come back, so.
Yeah, Tobias has got a new, the next batch coming in soon, but it'll still take a while before it reaches the US because it's got to be all sorted and cut the size and then shipped to you guys.
Yeah, it takes a while to get over here, unfortunately, but it's worth the wait.
Do you have any plans to make a steel like that, Coy?
I've thought about it. The problem is I don't really have the connections with a foundry to make it work, at least at this point. I'm not a metallurgist when it comes down to it, so the very precise exact science behind making a blade steel from the ground up is a little bit outside of my purview and skill set. So
team up with a guy.
Yeah, I mean, if the right guy came along, or I mean, even Tobias, honestly, I mean, he's a great dude. I chat with him all the time. But, there's a lot of steels out there. I don't know, I'm sure there's room somewhere in the market for a steel that does something specific, but yeah, I'm not really sure. I haven't really delved down that road yet.
Matt, you got a skit for us? You're going to ask Coy some crazy questions?
Always. There's one question that needs answering.
Hit me.
Gator piss.
The good old piss.
We've been getting a lot of questions on the podcast about it. So I was like, let's get Coy over so we could answer them.
Sweet, yeah. I mean, I'll answer as many as I can. Grayson at Gray Blades, he was the brains behind the whole thing, and helped us get that off the ground. And typically, whenever somebody has very technical questions, I defer to him because he's the professional. But I'll be happy to answer anything I can. So what you got?
Well, Albert, get in here.
Yeah, we have been using it according to the first YouTube video, which was on there. And there, I think it was, what's his name? Gray Blades?
Yes,
right?
Gray Blades.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He did a video on YouTube explaining the whole process. And the first video was like a 20-minute etching cycle. And then it came out with a perfect contrast and the nickel steel shiny and everything. Mm-hmm. And we tried that and we could not get it to work. So now I saw that you uploaded or you did an Instagram live, I think, right? With him, like a week ago or something. Mm-hmm. And there you showed a different process with 3 etching cycles with buffing in between, right?
Right.
How did you call it? Stack the oxides or something? Was that it?
Oxide stacking, yes.
Oxide stacking, yeah. But this procedure was different from the one I saw on YouTube like a few months ago. So we haven't tried the new one.
Gotcha.
Because with the old procedure, it didn't work for us. Maybe it was too cold because in the new video, the guy said that it has to be like 22 degrees Celsius at least, or 23, something like that. I don't know what it is in Fahrenheit.
It's like 70 Fahrenheit.
Yeah, something like that.
Yes. So the original video was 2 Decembers ago, I think, when we actually launched the product, and I actually haven't watched that video in a while. I need to go back through and refresh myself. Grayson, I mean, as people use it, people gain more tips and tricks on how to use it, and everybody ends up with their own slightly different process. The oxide stacking is something Grayson recently started developing and really working on. That's helping a lot, and so that's kind of why we did the live stream. It was like, hey, let's answer some questions. Let's show what Grayson's doing now with the Gator Piss. We need to put out a new official video and add some of those tips and tricks in there as we, because we just stumble across them as we're doing our daily stuff, or as he's doing his daily etching. Definitely one of the key things is it has to be fairly warm. So like 70 degrees Fahrenheit. That's about where you want it. If it's cold, I mean, any acid in general just doesn't perform as well at lower temperatures. And so warming it up definitely helps. Don't go over like 90, 95. Once it starts getting too warm, it'll etch too quickly, and you don't want the etching to get away from you and it get too deep. So there's a balance there. The oxide stacking, yeah. So I think in the main original video, he was etching a mosaic, and the mosaic was a fairly tight pattern. And when he did his initial 20-minute etch, he had all the contrast, color, and depth on it that he wanted, and so we actually stopped it there. But I believe he mentioned in the video the buffing. So the buffing is, some people find they don't need to do it, but typically he'll do an initial 20-minute etch, pull it out, and then buff it and remove the oxides off of it with a gentle rouge, like a purple rouge. And what he's doing is getting back to the bare steel, because where the high carbon steel is etched, it's got a porous surface. And if you scoop those oxides back off, you're allowing the next etch to actually get into the steel again quicker and straight away. So it's not trying to bite through that oxide layer again. So that's why the oxides are removed. And then once you have the depth you're looking for, the porous surface has gotten even more porous because you remove the oxides and clean them out each time. So now the super porous layers will hold the oxides a lot better. And then doing a an overnight sit and letting it sort of dry out a little bit. Excuse me. We found those black oxides really would stick in there, and to that point, he could even wash the blade with soapy water and a sponge, and the blacks wouldn't come out or come off. So we need to do another update video for YouTube to show the oxide stacking specifically. But yes, the biggest things are temperature and then prep, making sure that steel is dead clean. And we've tried a whole bunch of different products. Acetone is definitely not something you should use to clean your blades. It leaves a pretty heavy residue. Denatured alcohol is okay. It seems to be a little bit of hit and miss depending on which brand of denatured alcohol. But brake cleaner is by far the best that we've found. It leaves a perfectly clean surface as long as it's non-chlorinated brake cleaner. That is critical. And the whole washing with soap and water, that was propagated across the community a couple of years ago. I don't know by who, but that's not a great idea either, because a lot of soaps actually have lotions in them as well. And we were having smiths who were also washing their blades with soapy water, and it was leaving a residue because some of these soaps have other crap in there that's left to, moisten up your hands and stuff like that. And that, of course, is left on the blade as well. So don't use soap and water. That's just a good industrial brake cleaner with non-chlorinated. And that seems to be the absolute best. And anybody who we've got switched over to using that is getting perfectly clean blades and not having any streakiness or weird fuzziness on the edges. So,
yeah, we also tried heating up the gator piss, but we might have gone too high up. So we might have ended up using a gator piss that was too warm.
Gotcha. I mean,
because it was super aggressive. Yeah.
Yeah.
When we heated it up. Yeah.
Yep. When it gets hot, it gets real aggressive, which is good for stainless. But if you're doing carbon, it starts etching it really quick. So what was your steel blend on these knives?
15 and 20 and 1084.
Oh yeah, the classic. That's the
classic, and it was a mosaic Damascus. So I wasn't too worried about the deep edge because I wanted to have a deep edge. So,
right.
It also, it even came out pretty nice. But I also had to do a second cycle because the contrast wasn't there yet after the first one.
What finish?
I think it was 1200.
Okay,
and
gotcha.
1200 polished, and then I degreased it.
Mm-hmm.
I did not use what's it called, dechlorinated brake cleaner or non-chlorinated brake cleaner, because I don't know what it is.
Gotcha.
What is it? Non-chlorinated brake cleaner.
So apparently, originally, brake cleaner had chlorine in it, or some sort of chlorinated additive, because this material comes from the auto industry where they're cleaning car parts, and so. But that is not very healthy for you, and so they started doing a non-chlorinated version a while back, and the non-chlorinated version is definitely a lot better. With the chlorine in it, it starts to give it weird, funky looks, and it was actually contaminating the. If you didn't get it all off, it was definitely contaminating the acid in the gator piss. Okay. Mm-hmm. So a non-chlorinated version, which in this most of it in at least our stores around here is non-chlorinated. If you look on the cans, it'll say whether it is or isn't, but it looks like it's almost completely replaced an actual chlorinated version around here. So I guess the industry is kind of phasing out chlorinated brake cleaner. I'm not really sure, but all the stuff in my stores around here is non-chlorinated. So I would just make sure that that's what it says on the bottle. Yeah,
maybe someone should write a list, because of course I know what brake cleaner is. I've never heard about non-chlorinated brake cleaner.
No, me neither, man. I just know WD-40.
Yeah, we just buy brake cleaner. That's what it says on the bottle, or on the can. So it'd be nice to have a list of stuff you should use when using gator piss.
I agree.
Not just for us, but for all the other customers. I mean, I can ask you now, but what are the others supposed to do? So also with the purple rouge and stuff. So I don't know what it is. We have different polishing compounds and pastes here, but I don't know what a purple rouge is, right?
It's the purple color, right?
Yeah, it's just a purple color. They're color coded here, at least in the U.S. Let's see. I'm looking up. It was Combat Abrasives that sold it. That's where Grayson told me it was.
It's like green. It like represents the grit, right, or something like that.
Yeah.
Right, and I think the purple is the least abrasive. It's one of the really, really fine ones. I'm looking them up right now to see if they actually have a grit listing. Purple, here we go. So purple, yeah, see, it doesn't mention what the grit, it just says it's for a final show mirror finish.
Yeah, I think it's
So
like
it says.
it's something like medium and then fine and something like that.
But we have a white one in our shop, and I always thought the white one is the finest one.
We just use sheep. We call it. It's like a big block of sheep fat. That's what we call it. Yeah, it's
Gotcha.
pretty cool stuff.
But what's the color of the sheep fat?
It's sheep fattish. What's it like? Yellowish. It's like a very big
Yellowish,
block.
okay.
It's like the like industrial polishing. People always use that when polishing like stainless steel sheets and tanks and stuff.
But here's what someone should do over here, I think. Run tests, use different products, and try to get the best result with the products that are available in Europe.
If
right?
only we had like a Damascus making guy with a can of gator piss that could do that, Albert.
Actually, we have like 3 or 4 cans of gator piss, and I wanted to do a test run and a video for this very recording, but I
where
simply
did
did
you
not
buy them?
have at the time. What, the gator piss?
Yeah.
We bought it from Keith.
Oh, well, then let him sort it out.
Yeah, I mean it's a little hard on our side to test something that's available
Of
over
course.
there because we're not sure what's available
Yeah.
over there.
Yeah, no.
No, that's why I said someone
Yeah.
over here should do it.
Yeah, he's right.
Yeah, for sure.
We should. Because I kept, like, the longer we've been doing this podcast, and every guest we had on had, like, mixed results, I was like, this is some fucking bad commercial for Gator Piss, man. What the fuck? And
Right.
but yeah, I've been watching the live you did, and I was like, this knowledge is just not here. It's like it's over there, but it's not like centralized and
Right. And
not
we're going to
everyone's
work
aware.
on getting more media out there, particularly on the YouTubes and stuff like that, so that people can reference back to it. Because when we did that live stream, we got so many messages afterwards, and people were like, I changed the one thing you mentioned in your live stream, just one little spot, and my stuff is flawless. And I mean, Grayson showed it right there in an hour and a half, getting an absolutely stunning finish on that piece of steel. And yeah, it's really not hard, but there's a couple of things you got to get right, and being able to find stuff like non-chlorinated brake clean and somewhere in Europe, that might be hard to do over there. I have no idea. So yeah, some more testing, figuring out exactly what can be acquired in areas like that. That's outside of the U.S. Definitely something we should work on.
Yeah.
If it's not available over here, Keith is gonna find it out and he's gonna make it
I'll
available.
input it.
Yeah, he's already on it.
Everything is available over here.
Yeah, of course.
One of the other questions that we got a lot was, is there a shelf life? Like, is there expiration date on Gator Piss?
So if it's not being used, no. It can just sit there, not being, especially if it's unopened. As long as there's a lid and it's sealed up, then it's not going to deteriorate just sitting on your table. If you're regularly using it, then yes, it's going to wear out, because as you etch in it, you're actually using up some of the acid, and your first off, some of the water out of it will start evaporating, so your levels of acid to water are going to change. And then you've also got what comes off the blades. Whether if you're etching copper, you're going to be slightly etching copper residual bits into your acid over time. Same with the oxides off steel. So the Gator Piss will start to change and start to wear out basically over time. And so that is unfortunately based on how much you use it. So it's hard to calculate how long it's going to last for somebody. But when we were doing all our tests and I had Grayson etching a knife in it, we did it stages where he would etch one knife a day in it, and then he did one knife a week in it, and we we're testing how long it took for the acid to start not etching properly. We guesstimated that most makers would see between 4 and 6 months of use out of it before it started getting funky and needed to be replaced. But that is just a guesstimate, because if you etch Mocha Magane in it or something like that, it will very quickly deposit lots of copper in there and then start adding copper to your blades that you etch later, which you don't want. So we don't recommend putting solid copper and stuff in there. The copper steels that we make with the alloys we use in our copper steels, it won't copper bleed into the tank. It will do it very, very slowly. Not like some of the other copper alloys. So it works really well with our material specifically, which is great because we designed it to be hand in hand with that. But to answer your question, 4 to 6 months for most makers. If you make a lot of knives and etch a lot of knives, it'll probably be shorter. So,
but you can see like, when it wears off, it just gets funky and
it starts not etching as crisp. Yeah, the black stop or the contrast starts to get duller, and the actual color of the liquids will start changing. It'll start going more green and less gator piss yellow over time. So
I also got a lot of questions about like if the European mixture is like exactly the same as the mixture you guys are using. So obviously Coy was a part of that process, and the company that does the mixing in Europe is very, very professional, and they actually they took Coy's recipe and they changed it up like to even match like the difference of strength in the stuff that's in it, and so it's exactly the same. There's no difference.
Yeah, we spent some time with those guys making sure that was exactly the ratios of the liquids and the strengths of them, and I mean they seem to have got it exactly dead on. I mean they were very professional. So
it's actually they're one of the biggest in Europe. I don't know how it got in the back door there, but
yeah,
we all thought you were mixing it in your garage, Matt.
No, thank you.
That's what we do.
Yeah, that's what they do, and I just can't like the landlord here. If he sees me coming with that stuff, he already like raises his eyebrows when I get the big tank of gator piss.
Your insurance company would bow out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wish we had one of those. I mean, we do have tons of big chemical manufacturing places
you
here.
Can't
but
get in.
No, you can't. They won't even return a call.
No.
And if they do, it's like, hey, how many tractor trailer loads do you want? And I'm like, well, I don't need that much.
No, just one like one IBC, please. And I'm like, nope, no thanks. I just got lucky. I told you this. It's just my dad knew one of the guys that works there, and he was like, "Oh, that's a cool name. Let me dive into that." And yeah, it worked out amazing.
The name is perfect. It gets it gets in the doors everywhere.
Yeah, it's funny because every time, like even with my account, people like that, and they were like, Gator, PISS. I'm like, you could just say it.
Yep.
Yeah,
yep. Those awkward funny social moments when they're like, what do you do? Or what do you etch in? It's like,
It's very funny.
Yeah.
But yes, it's exactly the same, and like it comes from one of the bigger chemical companies in Europe, so there's no fucking around with that.
Coy, do you recommend a separate container for copper Damascus?
I recommend 2 tanks if it's something that somebody can afford to set up, just because your tank that you're not etching in, that you're not etching copper in, that tank will last a good bit longer before it starts getting contaminated. So you'll get more out of that tank just doing straight Damascus in it. And so I think if you just separate them, you're going to give yourself more life out of the one you're not putting the copper in, because the copper will just over time, it leaches into it. There's no getting around it. So
You mentioned that your the copper that you guys use doesn't bleed as much. Is that just due to like the purity of the copper or the certain?
Yes, so we actually kind of stumbled across that, realized that certain alloys bled more than others. And it's actually more obvious in the bronze, not as much in the copper, but the bronze, certain bronze alloys and brass alloys really bleed badly. And so we messed around with that, and it actually lined up the one that doesn't bleed very well, or doesn't bleed much at all. Forge welds and bonds for us way better. So that kind of lined up beautifully. And then with the copper, I've seen some people using a certain copper they were just getting off of, I can't remember what it was. It was some sort of building material like flashing or something. And they made some copper Damascus out of it, and they were etching it in the gator piss. And they were like, hey, this thing, as soon as I put it in there, it's just like dripping off the blade. And I was like, that's strange. What's the copper? Like, what did you make this out of? He's like, oh, it's just some old sheet copper I got off the roof. And I was like, oh, okay. So we don't know what that is. That could have been who knows what. But the specific copper alloy we use, it does really well in the etching. So,
You gonna share that with us, or is that a trade secret?
I'm not supposed to share it.
All right.
The other business
Damn.
partners and stuff they're kind of tight-lipped about that, so I probably shouldn't.
Albert's wanting to know, just asking for a friend.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But we're gonna find out.
yeah. I was about to say, Albert, shoot me a DM. We can talk.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah,
Oh Lord.
fellow steelmaker to steelmaker.
Because our gator piece turned green pretty quickly, so we might have used the wrong, because we also do copper Damascus, so we might have used the wrong copper, but we never thought about the copper, that this might have an effect on that.
Mm-hmm. I'll see if I can get I got it around here somewhere. I'll find my data sheet from my supplier, and it will have the exact specifications on it for you.
Oh, cool.
So,
Because now that you said it, of course, there's different alloys.
Yeah.
mm-hmm.
But
I mean,
when you start doing copper Damascus, copper is copper. That's what you think, right? But it's obviously not.
No,
I mean,
it's not. Yeah, and
But we've never thought about this. Yeah.
some suppliers will just say, "Hey, it's just copper sheet. That's the listing, and you buy it." And unless you ask them specifically for their certificate from the foundry or wherever it was made, you don't know exactly what the alloy is, because lots of them, they can be considered copper and just called plain old copper, but it's varying levels of alloy mixing inside it. So
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
You get a lot of recycled copper, and it could be mixed with anything.
yeah, oh yeah, definitely, yeah. Just don't do recycled copper. That's got all kinds of stuff in it. Yeah.
I've also heard a lot of people that I don't know why they would even bother doing this, because you've already researched and made the special blend for gator piss, but a lot of people are mixing it like 1 part gator piss, 2 parts ferric, and they got all these special crazy recipes.
What the fuck?
Yeah. Do y'all know who Pickle Cutters is?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what I was thinking of, but I didn't want to name anybody.
Wait, we've got some cool. Keith, can you do it?
No, I can't. No.
Come on, do your pickle cutters impersonation.
No.
He's a good buddy. Man. I love Nick.
Yeah, he's a very good guy.
I love Nick. But yeah, I cringe every time he tells me, yeah, I just got some new gator piss in, and I just threw it in my tank, and I threw a whole bunch of other shit in there, and I was like, oh, you ruined it.
Ruined it.
What's wrong with you? He's like, no, it works way better this way. I was like, man, whatever. I'm not reposting your stories though. If you tag me in them, that's what I'm doing.
That's very funny. So, did you ever consider shipping out smaller containers, Coy?
Yes. So we have, and we get asked about it every once in a while. It's something we've thrown around, the whole filling, and since we have to actually manufacture and bottle it all here, the idea of having to do a different size and having to change a bunch of stuff around during that process, wasn't a huge fan of it. But there are obviously people out there who don't need a whole gallon, or in your case,
5 liters, which
5
is even
liters.
more. Yeah.
Right. So I think we're going to have to, at some point, switch it up and start offering some smaller ones. Because I think there's enough of a market out there, especially in the jewelry realm and the guys who strictly do folding knives.
Yep.
I think they would buy just. I mean, I don't know over there what you would do, but over here we probably do like a quart or a half gallon, probably a quart.
You could start with just going by liters like we do.
Yep. But then all my customers would be like, how much is a liter? I don't know. Yeah, what does that look like?
Yeah. Well, the guys at Eurotech, how do you say that?
Eurotech. I just say Eurotech.
Yeah.
I leave the I off.
It's a very weird name, but they've been doing it, and that's been going pretty well.
They're selling it smaller amounts.
Yeah, they're selling liter bottles.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I didn't know that. That's what I'm trying to picture. What's a liter?
Like a half gallon.
Yeah, half gallon.
Half a gallon. Yeah.
Yeah.
Keith is our conversion guy because he's American and European.
Perfect. It's always good to have one of those on the podcast because I'm the other way around. I don't know the European stuff. But yeah, I think we should at some point start releasing smaller containers because I think at this point enough people have asked, and it'd be a little more labor on the fulfillment or the making of it, but you do what you got to do for your customers, right? So
I think for Eurotechny that was appealing to the people over here to buy a smaller amount. It was cheaper, obviously, for them to just have something to try out.
Yeah,
right.
Because with including shipment, it's almost like €100.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's getting close to it, and that's a lot of money, obviously. And like you said, if you're doing like folders and you don't need like a big tank, then
you got to make a powdered version.
That's tricky. That's very tricky.
Very tricky because
the biggest thing is you don't want to.
Yeah, you don't want to snort that powder for one.
Nope.
And then for two, there's actually a lot of powder regulation out there. I mean, and there's a lot of liquid.
Into it. Remember that?
I do.
Yeah, that was a big no-no from every fucking chipper.
Yeah, it sure was. And then the whole fact of you can't control what they put it in. So it's very important that it would be mixed into distilled water only. Because if you put it into something that had, like your tap water that had minerals and stuff in it, it would completely change it.
Yeah.
And so...
Imagine someone fucking snorting it or like by accident getting it into his eyes or whatever the fuck. And the lawsuits and all that shit. Come on.
Yeah. Or we may just create the new drug trade. This is the new cocaine for the new kids.
Yeah.
Gator piss.
Crisis.
You could have it
in America.
You could have it pressed into like
the blocks,
not pills, but like a block pressed to something to pill size or whatever tablets.
Oh my gosh, there's a lot of drug jokes there. I'm just gonna let it go though.
Yeah. Well, you're talking to Europeans now, so everything goes. There's nothing we can't say here.
No filters.
Okay, any more gator piss questions? Keith or Albert?
No, we're just gonna try it out again, and then we're gonna make a video or a list of stuff that you can use.
Yeah, we have to get back around to this and then turn this into an actual good advertiser for Gator Piss again.
Right. Well, I will say, I'll throw it out there to anybody else listening. Blade Show Atlanta, if anybody listening is going, we are going to have a booth. And we'll have Gator Piss there, but we'll also have Grayson from Gray Blades on site doing actual etch demos at the show and actually showing people in person, showing the products he uses to go along with them. And so we'll be there doing all that etching, we can answer questions, help out. We'll probably film some of that as well. My videographer's coming down. So I think it'll be really good for a lot of people to see in person his blade before it goes into the etch, and I'm talking more specifically people who are, maybe more isolated makers who don't interact in person a lot with other makers and see what other people's finishes look like and how clean the blades actually are. It's just good to see that in person, sometimes get hands-on with it, and to actually see what his blade looks like once it's etched, just the first 20-minute cycle. just how you can actually still see the reflection of yourself in the blacks of that etch is insane. So anyway, we're going to be doing that at the Blade Show in Atlanta this year in June. So just want to throw that out there.
Everyone go there. Did you get my T-shirts ready, Coy?
Your T-shirts ready?
Yeah, I want to go.
Aren't you
I'll
coming?
be there. Yeah, I am.
Do you have a table?
No table. No, I'm team housemaid. We're
Oh,
going with Ryan.
so you're
yeah.
gonna be wearing one of his shirts then. I see how it is.
Maybe, but if you make sure, I'll be wearing the Gator Piss shirt all day.
All right, I can bring you one. I'll bring you a Gator Piss CEO Europe.
Yes, please. That would be great.
Nice.
Keith, are you going? Or still no?
Unfortunately not.
Missing out, man.
I had hotel reservations and everything, and then a little family vacation got in the way, so it's not going to work out.
We were actually able to get reservations in the Waverly this time, which I've never been able to stay in. So that's going to be nice.
Well, is that a hotel over there?
Sorry. Yeah, that's
show.
That is the main. That's the hotel that's attached to the convention center.
Is that where the pit also is?
Yes, the pit is in that room. So we don't have to go run across the highway at 3 a.m. after the pit's over to our hotel room. So we can just go straight upstairs. So that'll be fun.
Nice. We're staying at some housemate rented. So.
Oh yeah, Airbnb. That's by far the cheaper way to go and the better way to go for actually enjoying a good night's sleep, because a house is so much better than a hotel room. The problem is you then have to drive to the show, which is kind of obnoxious. But other than that, it's way better to stay at Airbnb, in my opinion.
Man is just going to sleep on the floor in the pit. You're not going to make it home.
Nope. I'm just gonna.
Matt, have you ever been to the Blade Show before?
Nope.
Oh,
nope.
First time.
Yeah.
You're gonna have a blast. It's not something you can really imagine until you go. It's crazy.
I'm looking forward to it very much.
That's awesome. Well, you're welcome to come chill and hang out at the Baker Forge booth too. So
yeah,
I'll have a chair for you.
Do. Finally, shake your dad's. Is your dad's gonna be there?
My dad?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's right. You did talk to Bruce.
Of course.
most people never ask about Bruce because they don't know who he is.
Bruce. Yeah.
He's the background. Actually, unfortunately, Bruce won't be there. He typically doesn't go to the shows with us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Such an awesome guy.
Yeah, he is. He's a good dude. So, for everybody who's listening, Bruce he's one of the owners, but he's also our bookkeeper, and he handles all the packaging and shipping. So,
and he talks with the crazy Europeans about the Gator Piss.
That's right. That's right. Yeah,
he's got all the fun jobs.
He handles a lot.
Yeah.
He handles a lot of the weird stuff that I struggle to deal with. Like converting international stuff and then international tax law and all that kind of craziness.
Oh, yeah.
So
that was horrible.
Oh yeah, he helps a lot with that. So, but no, he typically doesn't come to the shows. The whole crew goes to Atlanta, so all the blacksmiths and the grinding guys and photographers, they'll all be there. But
nice, man. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's gonna be a party.
Yeah. Well, and then I think that at some point Baker Forge should go international and go to an actual European knife show at one time.
My wife was asking me about that the other day. She was like, "Hey, are there any international knife shows that we can make an excuse that you need to be at so that I can travel with you to some European?" So I actually didn't. I mean, I don't know of any shows other than the Perth Knife Show in Australia. Are there? And there's one in Japan, I think. Is there anything in Europe for knife shows?
I think it's the biggest one in Europe, right, Keith?
Yeah, it's Solingen in Germany. I would say is the biggest one.
Yeah.
Gotcha. What's when is that held?
May 11th and 12th this year. It's usually first or second week in May.
Gotcha. Ooh, May. That's so close to Blade Show, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
going to be up to my neck in Blade Show prep at that point. Maybe next year though, I might be able to squirrel away, and that would be awesome. I'd love to come out there.
Yep, Matt's gonna join me this year. I got a booth, and he's only like 2 hours away.
I'm like next to Germany, and he is like next to Germany on the other side. So
yeah, I'm 20 minutes away from Germany, but the show is about 8.5 hour drive from me still, all the way on the other side.
Wow,
that's not impressive for Americans, though.
Yeah, it would take 8 hours just to get across my state.
yeah, it's ridiculous.
But I've never been outside of the U.S., so I've been itching to travel a little bit. So that would be fun.
Yeah. Europe is the way to go.
They're going to stop you at customs with that beard.
Yep.
Well, I mean, I get stopped in our domestic airports and all the time. Not every once in a while, probably every third or fourth time I fly, they'll pull me aside and swab my hands and do all kinds of stuff. So,
well, no offense, but flying to America is a fucking nightmare.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's just ridiculous. The shit they want to know, like, before you can enter the country, it's insane. I was like,
wow.
It's better to fly to Mexico and just walk over the border.
Right.
It's way easier than to just go in the correct route.
I still have my American passport, and when I fly with the family, we arrive to the U.S., and my whole family has to go into another line if you don't have a U.S. passport, and I walk through, it takes me like 2 minutes to get through, and I have to wait like 45 minutes for them.
Wow.
Ridiculous.
That's obnoxious.
I think it's after 9/11 they had that new stuff, and then...
Yeah, they do like a retina scan and like fingerprints on everybody's hand, and it's crazy what they do.
Yeah. But also the forms you have to fill in before you can go. It's like they want to know everything.
Guess they're just trying to keep the bogeys out.
Yeah, probably.
Okay.
So do you have any plans for... I know you said that Gator Piss works with stainless, but do you have any plans to make a specific one for stainless?
That has been discussed a handful of times. We've done a couple of small tests. So I think there might be, the question is if we can get a blend that is different enough and works exponentially better than our current one for stainless. Mm-hmm. We wouldn't want to release something that works, branded towards stainless, but only works marginally better than the current one. And so it'll probably just take us some time to figure out what that looks like. But that is something that we've been planning on trying to get into. The question just being, can we get something that's, exponentially better? Because it does work on stainless. It works on stainless for the color. A lot of times, at least with the Damasteel stuff, we've been talking to them and they're doing tests. The Damasteel, it still needs a heavy, like a pure muriatic etch first to get the depth, because the Gator Piss didn't seem to be enough to get the depth on the Damasteel. But it worked great to get the color and the contrast. So I don't know. Something will be bouncing around. I think our biggest thing that we're working on, and I'll go ahead and throw it out there. Nothing is official yet, but it's been in the works, and we're still working on this. Is doing tanks. I know Matt and I've already talked about that a little bit last year.
It got like on a side. How do you say that? It got a bit quiet around that because of busyness, I guess.
It did. Yeah, our whole shop move put a wrench in new products there for a long while. But we're back on the track of sourcing a company that can make the tanks.
It's a pain in the ass.
It's like a heated tank or what?
Yeah, so what we're looking to do is make a tank that has built-in heating units, built-in aeration or movement, so moving the liquid, whether that be by bubbles or by something spinning, because keeping the acid actually moving slightly makes the etch a lot more even. It doesn't leave you any weird spots that might pop up. It etches faster if the material or the liquid's moving. Grayson just overall recommends keeping the liquid moving if you can. It still does fine if you don't keep it, if you don't have the liquid moving. But he noticed one day when he was swirling the knife around in the liquid that it came out looking better quicker. And so he started testing that bubbler out, and we realized that the liquid, keeping that liquid moving, was helping tremendously. And so a lot of people, at least over here, have been adding bubblers to their current setups, and a lot of times that's just weird tubes hanging in and out of the top, and it looks kind of janky, and one wrong move and you're going to pull that whole thing off the countertop. So the idea on our part is to make a tank that has built-in bubbler and built-in heating, all with a little digital readout on the front of the base, something that's very knit together, very tidy package with just one little plug coming out. You plug it in, you set your temp, and you go with an on switch. And so we've been batting around for, gosh, Matt, like a year now.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, it's actually close to a year.
Yeah, and the biggest problem, funny enough, being that we can't find somebody to make the damn tanks at the size we want.
It's ridiculous. Because when we discussed this, and Coy was like busy prepping with the moving and stuff, and I was like, oh, I got this, no problem. I'll find something to some supplier for the tanks, maybe overseas somewhere or something. But my God, that was hard to find. Apparently, it's very hard to do.
Which you wouldn't think would be hard. It's crazy.
No.
But I actually have a company here in the U.S. who's sending us a sample, and I think we might finally be onto it. Nice. They told me it's en route, so I should have it in the next handful of days. That being said, I had a company send us a sample Monday, and it showed up Monday, and we spec'd out exactly what the tank should be. And what showed up was a white feed pail bucket with a handle on it.
Jesus.
And I called him up. I was like, what is this? This is not anywhere near what we spec'd for you. It's not clear. It's white. It's round, short little stubby bucket that holds a gallon of animal feed. Like, what is this? And so, yeah, we had to drop that. But this other company, it looks like it's going to be kind of what we're looking at. And it's one of their existing products. So I don't think we're going to have to. Yeah, I don't think we're going to have to buy a die and have a die made, which was going to be
because
crazy
that was
expensive.
The thing. I also looked at like aquarium builders, stuff like that, and they could do it, but it was just so freaking expensive. It wasn't like viable at all.
Exactly.
So I'm excited to hear what you find out.
Yeah, as soon as it gets here, we'll know if we're on the right track with this company or not. I sure hope so, because I don't have anywhere else to go if that doesn't happen. But we'll find this. We'll find something.
It's ridiculous because it's kind of like I don't know if you guys have that over there, but it's like the Tupperware stuff where you could like save like dried foods and stuff. Mm-hmm. Like that's actually what you need.
That would be perfect. I mean, that's what we're modeling after.
Yeah, but it's like unfindable.
Yeah, who actually makes these? Is
I know they it's probably like from China and stuff, but
yeah, it's got to be from China somewhere. But finding the person who has that contact is the problem. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, that's in the works. We'll get around to it eventually. We'll find somebody. I put Bruce on it like a month ago and told him like, hey, this is your gig now, and put the metal to the pedal to the metal, and let's find something. And he has called so many companies.
Oh Lord.
And yeah, but he'll find somebody eventually.
So there's some kind of laboratory equipment that has a like a magnet in the bottom of it, and you put the magnet into the liquid, and it spins the magnet. You guys, you know what I'm talking about? Something like that.
I do.
Maybe some kind of induction heater to the magnet or something would work. You could heat it up and to mix it at the same time.
I've seen a couple of makers have those. I think the one concern would be it might actually move the liquid around like way more than necessary. With the bubblers, Grayson said it had to be turned way down, the initial one he got, because if it's sorry, there's a balance there, because if you start to develop a lot of bubbles that stick to the blade,
it'll fuck it up.
Yeah, it'll start leaving little pockets on it, and so there's a balance there, and I don't, the thing spinning doesn't really create many bubbles, as far as I know, but I remember seeing one guy's video, and it was like there was a whirlpool on the top of the acid.
Yeah,
like it was really
like a cyclone.
Yeah, and I was like, that's too much. That's clearly it surely doesn't have to be that big or that fast. So, we just have to get some testing done. But the first thing we have to have is a tank to start testing with. So
yeah.
That's
I did try it with the bubbler once. I used an aquarium pump, and I found that it turned everything black on the blade. So that was probably due to the air bubbles on the surface of the blade, I think.
Yeah, definitely could have been. Or you were just etching monosteel. I'm kidding. Yeah, we've nailed down how the fittings are going to go through the tank and to where they're waterproof and sealed and not leaking. Grayson's actually been testing those fittings out for a couple of months now. And so I think we have nailed down how we're going to pass that stuff through the tank as needed.
Yeah, that was a problem as well.
Yeah, because last thing you want is acid leaking. So
yeah, the what we came up with first, I don't know if that's still something you're onto. Well, there was like a tube from the bottom that went like all the way to the top, and then inside the.
Right, I think that's definitely still an that I think is kind of more of a backup option because that would definitely work. It's just gonna be a lot cleaner if we can do everything from the bottom inside the base. Yeah. And so I had Grayson testing that because I wanted it to have acid in it for an extended period of time and see if it would leak at all at any point.
Yeah,
and
you have to put it on there for a good while.
Right, and so he's had acid sitting on these fittings for. I'll have to circle back with him and figure out how long it's actually been. It's been several months, at least since last fall, with no leak so far. So that's a good sign.
Cool, man. This thing's gonna sell like crazy.
Oh, I know. The people I've mentioned it to in person, the first thing they say is, "I will buy one immediately."
Yep.
Call me as soon as it's ready.
We'll buy two.
Albert also wants your Helios Forge.
Oh, I love my Helios.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a...
Yeah, Matt, how is that going?
Yeah, I'm working on it.
I've actually got Brian cutting me a second one.
Yeah, I heard.
It's so nice.
Some minor changes?
Actually,
doors, right?
Oh, we did change the doors. I've already swapped them out on the one I've got. Yeah, we had to adjust the actual hinge some because we were getting some sag in the doors. The plate of the door needed to be beefed up so it could withstand the use because these forges are on all day, every day.
Yeah. So do you have the like the hinges on there now, like the actual weld thingies, or?
So it's a swinging door from the left-hand side, and it's swinging on the threaded rod that's hanging that holds the corners. And what he beefed up was the plate that connected that rod to the actual door. There was the transfer plate there, the hinge. He changed that around, beefed it up to where it's super thick now and wouldn't warp. Because it was just all the last one was doing was warping. That was the only problem. The door itself was fine. It was just the hinge was too thin. The material was too thin. And so the door was starting to sag. So, but these, we put the new ones on that he made for us, and they haven't sagged at all. They're perfect. So
good.
Yep. No problem there. But I always tell people or companies, it's like, if you want any sort of slight flaw in your product found, send it to Baker Forge, because we will either break it or show the flaws very quickly. Because it seems like everything is so hard use here. We show the flaws in something immediately. Makes its face.
That's good. Yeah. So, if it survives Baker Forge, then it'll survive everything.
Right. Yeah, we bought one of the power hammers. It was the 140 Bulgarian from Chris Cash at Mount Phillip Metalworks like a year and a half ago.
Oh, Lord, here we go.
Yeah.
Power hammer talk.
We started using it, and he came down and set it up for us, or showed us how to set everything up. And then he drove back up to his house. He's like 5 hours from us. And the next day I called him. I was like, hey, this and this broke. He's like, Coy, that hammer's been running in Bulgaria for the last 180 years or whatever. And he's like, and it's never broken, and you break it in one day. And it's like, well, that's how it goes around here. So, but yeah, power hammers.
Get in here, Albert.
I love power hammers.
Now, I wanted to ask you how many people you have working at Baker Fortune Tool before we get into the power hammer talk.
Oh, let's see here. We just lost a guy, but hired a guy. So I think we're sitting right at 12 now. Yeah, there's 12 of us.
Okay, but not all of them are forging, right?
No.
In the shop. Some of them have to do office work.
True. Yes, that includes social media manager. That includes our videographer. That includes me and Bruce and all that. So yeah, no, that's not all blacksmiths. If we just count blacksmiths, there's 1, 2, 5. Yeah, 5.
Oh, okay.
They rotate in and out. Their jobs change. They're not always all power. On the power hammer. Sometimes it's grinding work. Sometimes it's repair work. Like Cole. I mean, Cole does. We call Cole our head blacksmith, but he does. He does a lot of the machine repair too, because he's very tech savvy on fixing anything that's broken. And as I mentioned a minute ago, we break a lot of shit. So there's always something that needs to be fixed.
And you have a lot of old machines in your shop, I suppose. So
yes,
they also need to be taken care of,
right?
Sooner or later.
And it's not always that the machines are broken. It's more of just it's time for the routine maintenance. That it just happens to be because some of these machines need to be maintained really frequently. So.
But how did you start with Baker Fortune Tool? Was it just you at the beginning, or
it was?
What's the story?
Yeah, so I've been blacksmithing since I was a kid, and it's always just been a hobby. And I carried that through high school and college, and started. I was working at the time in my dad's painting company. I was actually running the paint company that he owned, and we were painting residential houses and stuff like that. And I was just blacksmithing on the side. I had a little shop, little one-car garage at my house, and just ornamental stuff, a couple of knives here and there, really kind of just more goofing around. And I started making Damascus. I built my own hydraulic press, my first little 25-ton hydraulic press, and I started making Damascus, and I fell in love with the process of making pattern welded steels and sand mines and stuff like that. And at that time I met Jason Knight, and he's actually about an hour from me, and we started hanging out, and he started showing me the ropes of more of the knife making stuff and his Damascus work that he does. And just I had so much fun with it that I decided to start posting about it on social media, and just posting what I was doing. And initially thought I was going to try to make and sell Damascus knives. But I found out super quick I hated the knife making portion. I just wanted to make the steel.
Yeah.
As soon as it was a bar of steel, I was like, perfect. Now I'm going to set it aside. I'm not going to make a knife just yet. I'm going to go make another bar of steel. So before long, I had a whole bunch of steel laying around, and I didn't want to make any knives. And while I was posting what I was doing on Instagram, people started messaging me and just being like, hey, that's a beautiful piece. Can I buy it from you, or can you make me one? And that kind of just slowly developed into every weekend and every night after work, I'm in the shop making steel, because I had a slowly growing list of people who were waiting on some steel. And right around that time, I had somebody ask me about putting copper in steel. And I think this was the point. There was one of the original videos hit the Instagrams or hit the YouTube about putting copper into steel or making copper Damascus. I think it was Alex from Valhalla Ironworks. I think it was his video when he went out with that. Somebody saw it and they wanted a knife out of it. And so they contacted a knife maker, and that knife maker then messaged me and said, hey, can you make a billet of steel with copper in it? And I told him, well, that's a stupid idea. What? That would melt all over the place, make a mess. And he's like, "Oh, yeah, you can do it. You can do it. I saw somebody on the internet do it." And I was like, "All right, well, I'll give it a try." Started messing around with that and promptly ruined my forge that I had built by melting a whole bunch of copper into it. So trial and error, and I ended up getting that to work. And once I started doing the copper in the steel, it blew up. And I had way more work than I could handle. I was still working the full-time job with the paint company, but it really started growing a lot. And I started having my brother come out and help me on the weekends just to help try to get caught up on how much demand there was. And when a couple of actual knife companies started DMing me and asking about steel and more volume, more than one bar, I realized that I might have something on my hands here, in that this might be something we could take bigger. And so I reached out to my dad and brothers who were also working in the paint company. And I said, "Hey, I think this is a business that could potentially take off. I'm considering pivoting over to this over the next few months and really growing it and taking a step back from the painting company and handing this off to somebody else to run." And their general consensus after thinking about it for a little while was, "Hey, we actually are kind of tired of painting too. Why don't we all just try to give this a go? We'll work the painting business while we build Baker Forge, but let's just take Baker Forge and see how far we can push it." And about a month later, we moved into our first shop, 3,000 square feet, and packed it out with machine. I mean, we built it up from the ground up, but we didn't go out and take a loan to get all this. We just were like, let's just take the orders as they come in, and at the end of each month, we'll take the profit, buy another machine, or hire a new employee, and just see how fast and how far we can push it. And before the end of that year, this was I started in 2019, and we really started pushing heavy growth in early 2020, I believe. Yeah. And before you know it, we packed out that space. I think we had seven guys or so at that building, and there was no more room for people. There's no more room for machines. We still had not caught up with demand. We couldn't make enough steel for everything that was being asked of us. So that's when we realized we needed to move into a bigger place. And so thus began the long process of finding a building that could hold us. And in this area, there is not much at all as far as commercial space. We actually had to reach out to our local chamber of commerce and ask them, "Hey, can you help us find something?" Because we're at a point where we're stagnating, and we've got some machines that are going to need replacing, or we're going to need bigger versions of them, and there's no room for them. We can't, we're busting at the seams here. And so they actually turned it around real quickly, found us a space that was vacant, got us in touch with the owners, and thank goodness they were willing to sell. And that brings us up to end of last year, right before the move.
So the painting company actually made it possible to start
Correct.
Baker Forge.
Correct, because I worked 2 full-time jobs there for about a year. Just handling both, because obviously everybody needed the income still. And just to give you a little bit of background, so it's me, my dad, and 2 other brothers who run everything. I am the kind of the head honcho. I started it all, but they also they're bought in, they're owners, and so it's my dad and 2 other brothers. Jay, who anybody who follows us sees him on social media. He's the shop manager. He runs everything on the floor. He's in charge of orders and production. And then I run all the office back end and the innovation work and the new products and stuff and customer relations. Bruce handles accounting, shipping, whatnot. And then the second brother, Zach, he's actually he's not an active employee. He's just a background support owner. So he actually he works in a different industry, a different field, and he's not local anymore up here. But he's still an active owner, but just not an active in the day-to-day operations. So,
do you still get to do some forging yourself?
I do, and what's awesome about where we've been so blessed with our setup is that I can now just forge what I want to when I want to. On the days when production's not running, we run 410s, so the guys work Monday through to Thursday. I can come in on a Friday and just work on something I want to work on, or work on some new products that I've been thinking about, and just that's where my passion is. It's always the new stuff, the new innovation, figuring out what can work, what are the possibilities, and can I hit that ceiling, And so I do a lot of that. And a lot of the steels and stuff that do end up going into production, I make the first ones. I make the test pieces.
And this is where the Helios comes in.
Right. Yes. The Helios, we needed bigger and better Helioses, or bigger and better forges. But yeah, so I do get to forge. I forge every week probably. I just don't do any production forging for the batch work. I just do all the trial stuff, the testing, the stainless core that we just came out with last week, or no, earlier this week.
Yeah.
Yesterday. It was yesterday it came out. I spent, God, I don't know how many months working with a couple of different knife makers on that. That was a lot of trial and testing to figure out a way to get that done right, to get that done properly. And so I would just work at nights and on Saturdays or Saturdays or Fridays, just in here after the crew had left or wasn't in here. And, it's nice and quiet. I can put my headphones on, listen to podcasts, and just, plug away. So.
And it's just you then in the shop forging.
That's right. Yeah, just me. It's nice and quiet.
Nice.
So, and it's hard to do it when the crew's here because all the forges are running, the furnaces are on, the hammers are all running. It's so loud and noisy, and I don't, if I'm in somebody's way, if I'm trying to do it while the crew's here. So.
Yeah, and you probably get like a ton of questions when everyone's there.
Yes, there's the inevitable chit chat going on, and I don't want to be a distraction to them because it'd be like, oh, what's Coy working on? What news going on over there? And I don't want to be a distraction. So, but yes, I do the fun stuff and what I consider the fun work, the testing and evaluations and the new stuff.
So you were saying that you do most of the forging on the power hammers. So now the power hammers talk starts.
Yes.
so that everyone knows.
Yeah. Now that it's going to be like a dick size contest on who has the bigger.
No, it's not. I've seen Coy's forge. We are way smaller. But I'm interested in what kind of hammers he has.
All right. So my very first power hammer was a Big Blue 110. Are you familiar with the Big Blue hammers?
Sure.
Yeah, so we started there because it was kind of the most economical hammer I could get my hands on at the time. That was right after we moved into the new shop. And it works great. I mean, especially for any hobbyist or small shop, those are great hammers. They do require, of course, an external air compressor, which is kind of obnoxious. But great hammers. And we had that one for a long time, did a lot of work on it. But then, we decided, we were growing. It was time to get a second hammer. And I wanted a self-contained air hammer really badly. And so I got in touch with Chris Cash at Mount Phillip Metalworks. And he's been my power hammer guy from day one. Because I connect with Chris. He's such a nice dude. He and I get along really well. And he knows so much about power hammers. If I have any questions, he knows everything. So he had a Bulgarian self-contained air hammer. A 140 pound ram. And Keith, you'll have to do the conversion there. So it was, do you have the conversion?
Yeah, it's like 65 kilos, something like that.
Okay. So that was about the size we needed because the smaller shop just didn't have space to put a giant one in. And so we got that one, and it was just night and day. How much harder it would hit. It's a 2-piece hammer, so the anvil is separate of the main frame. It's wedged in with the wood wedges, and we just loved how it worked, how it hit, how controllable it was, and fell in love with the self-contained air hammer. So it's very similar to like a Nazel. It's that same operation or how it operates, and then I kind of got on a little bit of a buying kick around this time. I bought that hammer. I bought the big Cincinnati Bickford drill press, which is 9.5 feet tall. And when we bought that, I got the Bradley. So I have a Bradley strap hammer.
Yeah.
It's a 150 ram on that. It's got combo dies, so a flat die and drawing in one. And the Bradleys were probably one of my favorite styles of hammers based on aesthetics and just the fact that it was made in New York, here in the U.S. I just love that history behind the Bradley straps. And so I picked that one up more as out of just, hey, I really like this hammer. It didn't really go into production. It did a little bit, but we don't use it for production now. I use it to play with, just because now we've got the big one, and I'll move into the big one. So we've got the Bulgarian 140 we got originally. I got its great granddaddy version of that one. So this is a very large 350 ram head, self-contained air hammer, and I don't know what 350 pounds converts to.
158 kilograms.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's
a big hammer.
That apparently is without the die, and the die itself is is big enough to sit in my lap. So it's probably a little more than that with that die on there. But this one required to be. Sorry, I'm just figure out what I'm saying here. So this hammer needed a lot of what the hell am I trying to say? Concrete. There we go. This hammer needed a lot of concrete under it. And so when we bought the new shop, one of the first things we did was mark out where everything was going and laid out where the hammers were going. And we poured 7 feet of concrete under that power hammer. Again, don't know what the conversion is, but this hammer also had a 2 meters. Perfect. Yeah. The anvil of this hammer is recessed into the floor, which was another reason why I didn't want to do this in the old shop, because it was a rented shop and we weren't going to be able to do that. But the anvil sits in a pocket in that floor because it's too tall to sit above the ground. And it's a beast. It moves steel almost too fast. It's got so much power behind it. But what's funny is it is so much easier to control than the smaller hammers, which wasn't apparently something that is a thing, and I didn't realize this until we got one. But the bigger the hammer, typically the easier it is to control with your foot pedal. It has to do with the air valves or something.
Yeah, and if there's 2 air valves, it's easier to control also. If there's 2 air valves and not just one. With the old Bichets, there's 2 air valves, one at the bottom and one at the top.
Oh.
Do you know what I mean? You open up 2 air valves with the pedal.
Yes.
And they're easier or better to manage.
Yes, the Bulgarians, both of our Bulgarians have 2 air valves. There's a top and a bottom.
Yeah.
But even between those two, the bigger one is dramatically easier to control. Even though they're pretty much identical. I mean, the valves, the timing, the linkage, like pretty much everything is the exact same between the hammers. Just one is a lot bigger. And those hammers are workhorses. Those are probably some of the least needed, at least those machines need the least amount of work. Obviously, you got to keep the oil tapped up and full, but they run nonstop and they're true workhorses. And that large 350 power hammer has exponentially increased our production, because the guys can take a stack of Damascus, 50 layers high, 50 layers thick, 6 inches long, 2 inches wide, and they can draw that down into a bar to restack in one heat. Just pound it out, square it up, run it through the rolling mill, then done, one heat. And it's insane to watch them do it back to back to back, but couldn't be done without a hammer of that size. So yeah, I'm a big power hammer fanatic. I love these power hammers. So what power hammers do you have, Albert?
We have 5 in total. We have except one hammer, but the other 4 are all 2-piece hammers, just like your Bulgarian one. We have 3 Bichets, so Bichet and Gross, the German company. I think they actually invented the power hammer.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Remembering correctly. I think the Nasal is a company from the US, I think. They were allowed to use the German patent to build the power hammers over there, if I remember correctly. So we have our smallest power hammers is like 2 30-kilogram power hammers, which means 66 pounds. And then we have a 50-kilogram power hammer, which is 110 pounds. Then we have our workhorse, which is a 100-kilogram power hammer, which means 220 pounds. And then our heaviest hammer is 150 kilograms, which is like 330 pounds. So not quite as heavy as your big Bulgarian.
Nice. Yeah, but I mean, once you get to the 300 range, I mean, those hammers are pretty much, they're all moving the same amount of steel.
Yeah, we were also very surprised when we got our 100 kilogram power hammer, which is 220 pounds. The billet stays hot so long because you keep the heat in there because of the force you apply with the hammer, right? So you can draw out. It takes you 1 or 2 heats to draw the billet, which was mind blowing to us because before that we had a lighter hammer, which we were not able to do it with this one, but with the new one, which was mind blowing.
Right.
Actually.
Yeah.
And they're extremely heavy. We also had to do the same stuff you had to do. We had to cut the floor open. We had to dig down there. We had to pour in like 20 tons of concrete. So,
yeah.
It's a shitload of work.
It is a lot of work, but boy, it makes a big difference when a hammer's on a foundation as opposed to sitting on the shop floor. Good.
Yeah. And our neighbors wouldn't like it if the hammers were sitting on the floor, on the shop floor.
Yeah, for sure.
No, it makes a lot of sense also for forging because otherwise the whole building would be vibrating.
Oh yeah, it'd destroy your building. Hammers of that size for sure. Yeah. We were digging the holes. I dug all the holes out for ours. We hired somebody to fill the concrete in, but we did the digging, and we had also hired some carpenters who were doing some work to the office areas, and we had the excavator in there and we were digging out the hole, and one of the contractors walks over and looks in the hole and is like, "What in the world are you guys doing?" That's like two and a half.
Rid of some people.
Yeah, he's like, somebody's gonna disappear in that hole, and I was like, "Oh, it's a foundation." He's like, "A foundation for what?" He just didn't understand where it was, what machine was going on it and why it needed to be that deep. But yeah, it's crazy. A lot of people don't realize how much. You see the hammer sitting on top of the concrete. But so much of what makes that hammer work so efficiently is what's sitting beneath it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's pretty cool.
So Albert works. His shop is in like what would in the U.S. would be like a maker space. So he's got all different kinds of companies in there in office space. Also, do you ever have anybody complain about the power hammer, Albert?
Not really complain, but we also have an office in the office building. And last week, Andy was forging on the 55 kilogram power hammer. So the what's that in 110 pounds. So on one of the smaller ones, but it goes so fast because it has we call it Schnellschläger. So it moves faster than the other ones. And I was sitting in my office with 2 other guys from the office building, and I was hearing the hammer so loud. I said, "Holy shit, what's that? Is that Andy forging?" And they just said, "Welcome to our world." So apparently you can hear it in the office building, but I've never heard it before because, of course, whenever we are forging, I'm down there and not up here in the office building. But yeah, you can hear it, but no one ever complained so far.
Luckily, our new space here is on 6 acres, and we don't really have any neighbors very close, so we're not really making any enemies with our neighbors here because they're a good ways away. They can't hear anything.
Did it come with all the land?
It did. Yeah, we've got a real nice river running right through the center of it. So right beside the building, there's a big river that you can fish in, and the guys all go down there when it gets real hot, and they'll go cool off down there. So, yeah, it's a nice place. It's actually there's room enough for us to put another building this size up if we ever got to the point where 10,000 square feet was too small. Then we've got space to build another one. So,
I mean, we've been looking for a place like this too, but it's so hard to find something like this around here.
Oh yeah. I believe it.
Especially if you don't want to buy it, but if you want to rent it, then you have to tell the landlord that you want to cut up the floor open and dig down there 2 meters and pour in 20 tons of concrete.
Yeah.
Then you're not gonna get the place. I mean,
I love your building, man, but I really don't like the floor, and I'm gonna cut it all to hell. Yeah. That was one of the biggest reasons we had to move was because we needed to be able to pour foundations for these things, and The old landlord wasn't super happy. He let us do the first hammer. I don't know if he fully understood when I talked to him what I was going to do. And he's like, oh, yeah, that's no problem. And then we cut it up and poured the new foundation. And he saw the video on Instagram. And the next time I saw him, he was like, yeah, didn't quite understand. I didn't realize just how much you were going to do to that floor. And I was like, oh, well, sorry about that. It's done. So
No turning back.
Yeah.
no turning back now. Luckily, that foundation was flat to the floor. So it didn't really cause that big a deal. There was no pockets left when we left, but yeah.
Is it an expensive area where your shop is located? So if you just bought the building, right? As the new shop you bought,
Correct.
right? So is it expensive compared to other areas in the US?
I would say we're fairly middle of the road. Where the shop is, it's out of town. It's a kind of out in the country a little bit, so that helps. If you go into town, which is Boone, North Carolina, it's just 10 minutes into town. That does get kind of expensive because it's a tourist area. We're up in the mountains, and we've got one of the biggest attention draws up here in the wintertime is skiing and winter sports, and then the fall leaves are crazy through here during the fall. So we get a lot of like people having second homes up here and expensive homes, but that's mostly in town or right around town. Once you get out here in the areas where it's kind of countryside and whatnot, it's not near as bad. So it's not as cheap as if you were much further south or down in Texas. Land's a lot cheaper down there. But it's not near as bad as it would be further up north near the cities and stuff. Kind of middle of the road.
That makes sense. I looked it up on maps because there was for a little while there was talks that after Blade Show we would go to Baker Forge.
I know. I was excited about that, and then subsequently disappointed.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, old Brian pulled the plug on us. So, but yeah,
why did that not go through?
He just had. I think it was just too much on his plate. He had so much going on. Yeah, and to host the foundry out here, it would cost him a good bit of money to put everybody up out here and whatnot. And I think he wanted to dedicate those resources to some other things. So it just ended up not making it happen. But we are talking about doing a hammer in up here in 2025. It'll probably also be after Blade Show, but I think we're going to try to do an actual hammer in and bring a bunch of people in and do a big, week-long hammer in with people just coming in and out as they can throughout the week.
Nice.
So that's been talked about. We might also just do one as well next year. Not next year, later this year. Something a little on the smaller side. Just, trying to get some smiths in. We did a hammer in last year after Blade Show at the old shop, or 2 years ago, sorry. And most of it were local knife makers, and we had a few that had been traveling for Blade Show, but were traveling back through our area to get home, and they just stopped in. And it was an amazing time. That was the first time I'd ever been to a hammer in or hosted one, and just to get all the smiths together and just, forge steel late into the night and make knives and stuff. It was a good time. So we'll be doing more of that because we actually have room for people to, they can camp. There's a lot of camping's a big thing up here. I don't know if you guys do any camping, but that's big up in
but it's not as cool as camping over there, I think.
Yeah, since we're up in the mountains though, the weather's always really mild in the summertime. It's beautiful. It's not super hot. And so we've got plenty of flat ground out here by the river, and it would be perfect for people to do tent camping or car camping and stuff like that. So I think it would be cool to host a hammer in and just have people stay out here on the property. So
you could do like another version of Maker Camp over there. You have plenty of room.
That is true. And then that was also tossed around, doing like an actual event, and have paid people here to run classes and stuff, and actually make it a real learning experience for a bunch of people, and that also might be in the works. Not a huge fan of a lot of people who I don't know being here and using machines that we rely on to make a living. You know?
Yeah, that's a tricky one.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was, I mean, there's a little bit of a concern with a hammer in general, but typically I can kind of control who shows up to a hammer in. But anytime something like that's going on, you know, we're not making steel, we're not producing product. And so it does take away from that. So we have to make sure it's, you know, worth it.
So talking about machines, what's your favorite machine in your shop?
Oh, that's a good question. That's like asking what's your favorite child. Let's see. It's probably a 3-way tie, and I know that's not the answer you wanted, but I think it's a 3-way tie. We've already mentioned the rolling mill. That rolling mill is a lifesaver. I love that thing. The big power hammer. There's just something about being able to beat steel and hear it in your chest, you know. And then I think probably close to the very top is going to be our Blanchard grinder. Do you guys know what a Blanchard is?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've seen it on your Instagram.
Oh, right, yeah.
I'm super jealous, by the way.
Oh man, the Blanchard is so cool. I've wanted one of these for a long time. And I originally, when we were making steel, we always just shipped the bars with the scale still on it because we did not have the capability to grind the bars clean and do every single bar just because we had so much volume going out of the shop. But I always wanted to get to the point where we were sending out finished steer that was perfectly ground and didn't have any scale on it. Because in my opinion, that's just much more professional. That's the way it should be done. But I needed to be able to get a Blanchard grinder or something that could flat grind a lot of steel all at once. And that's what a Blanchard does. So once we were looking at moving, that was the first machine on the docket to get ordered was a Blanchard grinder. And that was going to enable us to grind everything. And we loved it so much, we actually use it for all the intermediate steps. So anytime we're restacking Damascus, those bars get put on the Blanchard and get Blanchard ground, flat ground, and then go back to the forge guys where they cut them up and restack them. So we're also grinding the intermediate levels and grinding final bars to finish dimensions. So it's a lifesaver to be able to just load up a magnetic chuck with, you know, depending on the size, 10, 15 bars of steel, run it up onto the grinding head, set your depth for how much you want to take off, turn it on and walk away is fantastic. It grinds really fast. It grinds under flood coolant, so everything stays nice and cold. I actually, once we got it in and started using it, we realized this is kind of a full-time job. And so I actually hired somebody specifically to run the Blanchard because it's on and running all day, every day while the crew's here. So we have a dedicated Blanchard grinder employee. And probably going to have to get a second one because the forge is producing so much steel right now that we're getting a little bit of a backup, a little bit of a bottleneck at the Blanchard grinder. Even though it grinds steel fairly quickly and does it way faster than doing it on like a belted surface grinder by hand, it's still struggling to keep up with the processes. So I think we're going to end up getting a second one, and we're probably going to go even bigger with the next one. The one we have now is a 36-inch or 3-foot table. So the magnetic chuck is 3 feet in diameter and has an 18-inch grinding head. But I think the one we're gonna upgrade to, a 48-inch table, so it can hold even more steel and grind more all at once, and just to stay caught up on the flat grinding work. But the Blanchard, super cool. Also, one of the hardest machines for us to get running. We bought this from the same company we bought the rolling mill from, because we had a great interaction with them with the rolling mill. And right around the same time, I just was looking on their website. I was like, oh, they've got Blanchards too. And so I reached out to them. I was like, hey, can we get this on the same truck? Because you're bringing the rolling mill down. That didn't end up working. They couldn't bring them both. It was too much weight. But they brought the Blanchard down, and they told me that it was going to be 3-phase 480 volt, which was perfect because that's what I have in the building. Well, they were mistaken, and when the machine showed up, my electricians were looking at it, and it's 3-phase 240, not 440. But the problem was they didn't quite realize that until after they'd already started hooking it up, and they actually turned on the machine with the wrong voltage hooked up to it. and they roasted all of the fuses in it, and the electromagnet control was shot. So I had to call the company we bought it from. Was like, hey, my electricians hooked it up and turned it on before they realized that you sent us the wrong data sheets for it, and it's a different voltage than you said it was. And luckily that they were great guys to work with. They sent us down a transformer so that we could step up or step it down to the 220, and they paid to have all the fuses replaced and everything. So, but that was like a 3-week ordeal of trying to get that machine up and running, because initially we couldn't figure out what was going on, but it was well worth it in the end. Well worth it.
Yeah. What's the grit on this machine of the stone?
So you can put all kinds of different grit stones in it. These are segmented stones on this one. And so there's 4 separate stone heads. And we put the most aggressive ones we could find because we needed it to grind it quickly. Obviously, we're not going for a specific surface finish because it's just raw stock. And so we put 24 grit stones in it because that was the most aggressive I could find. And funny enough, it's actually a really clean finish. We've got a process down now. We're on final bars. We'll take just a super clean, like 0.3 of a thousandth pass and let it polish out and just run for a few minutes on that super clean, super fine finish pass. And even a 24 grit stone is leaving a beautiful, basically somewhere between a 120 and a 220 grit finish on the bars. So very clean and very crispy, even though it's a really aggressive stone. So that worked out well because we can also push it and really take some harder passes, and it will still grind really quickly and eat the material up if we need it to, but also leaves a good finish if we take it easy at the end. So,
and that's the final finish of your billets.
Yes, blanchard ground, and then the bars just get rinsed off. They kind of get washed because they've got the grinding fluid on them, and then they spray them. They spray them down with a coat of oil and rub a coat of oil into them before they get labeled so they don't rust. Yep, and that's how they're finished.
Nice.
We don't etch them. We kind of dabbled around with etching them, but it's just a bar of steel, and some of the layouts look good etched as a bar, and some of them, you kind of need to grind into them to actually see the pattern. So, we found that once they were etched, they wanted to rust faster and more easily, and so we just were like, you know what, we're not going to etch them. We're just going to we'll oil them up, go real good, and put the labels on them, and just call it from there. So.
Now I want to have one of these machines.
It's super handy. I bet you could find one over there. I'm sure they've got some somewhere.
Yeah, we have a normal surface grinder, a standalone surface grinding machine, which we converted to belt, so that we can use different belts. But we have to go up the grits when we're using belts because a 24 grit belt does not leave a nice finish on the steel, no matter how slow you go. Yeah, we have a standalone surface grinder that still has a stone wheel on it. We were going to, we had that in the old shop. We were going to convert it to a belt, but then we got a belt surface attachment for our 2x72 from a Mary Braid. And it had a little bit of a limitation on the length of the bar you could put on it. But for most stuff, they were able to, for like restacking, they were able to grind it on that. And so we ended up not converting the standalone to a belt. We left it as a stone for any little precise tooling we needed to make because the stones are just a lot more precise. But now that we have the Blanchard, that one just sits in the corner and does nothing. So yeah, sure.
Yeah, I probably won't ever get rid of it though because I got it for $300 on Facebook. So it was so cheap. I got it for such a steal. I was like, I can't get rid of it now. I didn't pay anything for it, so we'll keep it around. But Blanchard's where it's at, man. That's game changer.
Yeah, the surface grinding attachment's perfect for like a hobbyist maker or even just a single guy that's self-employed. But for the amount of steel that you're making, you must have been going through belts like crazy.
Oh, man. Thank goodness we had a sponsorship deal with Red Label Abrasives because I would have, it was such a big expense at first. I was like, holy crap, we're going through so many belts. And we weren't even grinding the final bars. This is just for restacks. and cleaning up the edges and stuff. And we got on with Red Label because I messaged him. I was like, hey, can we work out a sponsorship or a wholesale deal? Because I will literally buy pallets of belts from you at a time. I just need them for cheaper than you sell them on your website. So we got a great sponsorship deal with them, and that helped a lot. So,
and you can't even use like your worn out belts from grinding knives on them, because if you have a little groove, then you get these grooves in your billets too. You get like a long straight groove that's deeper than the rest of it.
Exactly. And when you're just in production mode, and I would tell the guys this, treat the belts like they're free. It's a consumable. As soon as it is not cutting as well as it should be, or it's not cutting like a brand new belt, it's time to get a new one on there, because it's less expensive for you to spend less time grinding this and get the job done quicker than it is to save and scrounge and keep that old belt going as long as it'll go, because man hours is more expensive than a new belt. So, and that took some time for some of the guys to get used to, because a lot of my employees are also knife makers, and so they're used to using a belt until it's dead, or when it's starting to get really worn out, you start using it for other steps in your knife making process. And I actually had some guys taking belts home too. They're like, I think there's still life left in this thing. And be like, go for it.
It can't be cheap on that. Whenever I'm making like a big batch of plans or whatever, and I try to be cheap. It's so much more work when the belt is.
Oh yeah.
Just get the fuck out of here. Get a new one on. It's so much better.
Exactly. Yeah. Labor's expensive, belts are cheap.
Yes.
Yeah, so you mentioned Chris Cash a few times. We'll have to put him in the show notes. He's an American guy. He's got a podcast called the Axe and Iron podcast. I can't remember who the host is. Ooh. Roy Scott, right?
Yeah, Roy Scott and him. I think they both host it.
Yeah, that's a good show.
Nice.
Not completely about knife making, but a lot of machine talk, and of course from Roy with making axes and refinishing them.
Yeah, they put up an episode like once every 2.5 months.
Yeah, when they feel like it. Yeah.
When they feel like it. It's very much just two guys sitting around chewing the fat. Yeah. No structure.
Nice.
Yeah, a couple of good dudes. And Chris has connections with power hammers and stuff overseas. So if any of you guys are looking for a new hammer at some point, even though he's U.S.
Always looking for a new hammer.
Yeah. I mean, even though he's U.S. based, he's still got some connections over there, especially in Bulgaria. And I'm sure he could hook you up with a hammer from over there. I think he actually just sent, what's the guy he works with? The Bulgarian guy who actually works with Chris. Tetso. There we go. Tetso went over to Bulgaria like a couple weeks ago, and they just set up to get a shipping container of hammers brought to the U.S., a whole shipping container full of them. So all Bulgarians like the one I have. Oh, here's a funny story. Apparently, when he came up to bring my 350 hammer, he said that they were in talks right now with his guys in Bulgaria to get some more Bulgarian hammers over. And he said, Coy, you have single-handedly ruined the market for Bulgarian power hammers, because your videos made them so popular that now they're in such high demand, and I can't get a hold of them as easily. And the price is 3 times as much as it was 2 years ago.
Well, it's easy fix. Just say that you hate it on video, so you can write down.
Yeah, well, apparently, unknowingly, we popularized the Bulgarian air hammer over here.
Pretty cool, right?
I know. I thought it was.
You actually have cool. Like a market impact.
Yeah, and I had no idea, and he was slightly annoyed about it, but it was still fun. That was cool. Kind of, biting myself in the ass there though, because if I ever want to get more Bulgarians, they're going to start costing me more money.
Almost 2 hours, people.
Yeah.
Is this the longest one?
No, we did a 2 hour before.
Do you know exactly how long? Because we need to go over that.
Yeah, it's time to break a record.
Yeah. We're so
Just add some
close.
dead air to the end.
I don't think I've ever done a 2-hour podcast.
Really?
I don't think so.
Nice.
Yeah, I think this right here will be a record for me here shortly. So
Wasting Coy's expensive time. Nice.
Yeah. It's gonna send you the bill.
Yeah. Fuck.
I love podcasting. I don't. One day I'll have the time to do one of my own, but for now, I love coming on podcasts and chatting with guys. It's so much fun.
You've been on a podcast spree lately.
I have, yeah, and that's funny. They come in waves, and then there's a dead period where I don't go on any for several months. But yeah, I was on Full Blast with Jeff Fader a couple weeks ago. Hustle and Grind last week. Yeah, they come in waves, which I don't know why, but it's fun. It's just fun for me. I really enjoy it. So thanks again for having me on here. I love talking shop. So
anytime.
Sure.
Yeah, if you love podcasts so much, we're looking for a sponsor. Just throwing that out there.
Oh,
nice.
there you
Throwing
go.
it in there
Plug it.
on the live.
Shameless
like it.
plug.
Yeah.
Do y'all have any
Shameless.
sponsors?
No,
Yeah,
we just
knifematerial.at and DIY Europe.
yeah, we pay for everything.
Yeah.
I like it.
I think this is like the 16th, 17th episode, something like that. So we're pretty fresh, pretty new.
Right. Yeah. When let's see, last week I listened to the Trollsky episode. I was like, if they're gonna have me on the show, I gotta listen to an episode at least. I gotta fit something in here.
Chose a good one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was a good one.
Did you Google blue waffle?
I did not. No. I did not.
Don't.
But I did not have to Google Trollsky. I know exactly who that was.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a good
Everyone
episode.
knows Mr.
So.
Trollsky.
Yeah. So, but yeah, no, you guys are doing great on the podcast front. What started this whole thing for you guys? Like, what was the drive behind starting a podcast? Whose idea was it?
Matt just kept bugging me until I said yes.
It's seriously. I said, we have to do this. There's not one podcast in in the knife making realm in Europe, and there's definitely not one where there's like, it's always like knife makers and not as much like knives, like tooling suppliers and like knife shops basically.
Right.
And then Albert was like on the same idea, but we just beat him to it basically, and he thought it was going to be like a podcast that was way more into tooling and not as much into knife making. But
Gotcha.
he soon figured out it wasn't like that and joined. So
Cool.
yeah. I basically said to Keith, like, let's do a podcast. And I was like, it's no work at all. And then he ended up doing like everything. And he spends like 6 hours editing and stuff, and I'm not doing anything. I just sit here and talk.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. One day I'm going to have a podcast. I think it would be so much fun.
And it's expensive for the people who, yeah. A lot of people think you just turn the mic on and start talking, but I think we spent like $500 for a microphone and that kind of stuff to get started. And then you got whoever your podcast recording software is, you got a bill for that, and you got a bill to put out the podcast out into the.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, and the time, like the editing time for you guys, it's insane. I was like, please stop editing so much. But apparently it's needed. So,
yeah.
But I don't know anything about that, luckily.
No, but good editing makes a good show.
Yeah,
and
sure.
you always have to do a lot of editing.
So what in all is edited? Like, are you just editing out like dead air spots or
like all the shop noises that we're hearing in your background? Like when we're talking with each other, you don't notice it as much, but after it's recorded, all that stuff seems to be like really amplified. So if you're playing with the mouse or keyboard or something, they get really loud in the.
I never do that, luckily.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Were y'all able to hear much background noise on me right now or earlier?
You don't know. At least I didn't. But
I heard some
apparently
machines.
it shows up after. Really?
Yeah.
I was watching my little indicator here to see if it was actually picking up like enough for it to show on my little indicator on my icon there. And I didn't see anything, but I wasn't sure if that was going to show up in the final cut or not, because I am at the shop. The guys have left now because it's past time, but earlier they were still running stuff, so hopefully that's not too loud.
Albert will fix it up.
I'll
Is
get
Albert
rid of
gonna
it in
do the
post.
editing? Nice.
Of course, Albert is always gonna do the editing.
I did build this office, so this is the one office we added, the one I'm in. And when we did it, I had been on a couple podcasts at the time already, and I was like, hey, I want to make sure that this is as quiet as possible so that I can actually record during the day at the shop while the guys are working. And so when we put up the walls, we used the real heavy rock wool insulation, double layered. So we're trying to isolate the noise in here so it's quiet. We put up soundboards and everything. So hopefully it's not too terrible for you, Albert.
No, your audio is pretty good from what I can hear.
Good.
Yeah. Way better than some of the other guests we had on.
Well, I mean, I've got a real microphone, so that makes a difference, I'm sure.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, does make a difference.
Maybe one day Keith and Matt will
Shut
also get a
the
proper
front door.
microphone.
I will get it though, because I just love that stuff.
We need some more Patreon members before we can do that.
Yeah, we need to read them out, because we only read them out when you're here.
Yeah.
I'll send you the list so you can read them.
Yeah. You say that every
Because
time.
I can't pronounce half the names anyway.
Yeah, that's right.
Awesome.
So we're gonna wrap it up, or you guys want to continue?
I think that's a
I
show.
think that was pretty good.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, read out the fucking patrons then.
Oh, I gotta find the list there.
Jesus Christ. Fucking amateur.
All right, we got Christoph Stiegler from Kanji Knives, Sven from New Artisan. I'm trying to pronounce it right. Johan Fagerlin from Fagerlin Bladesmith, Travis Haynes from Bird Forge, Roy Rutten, Mark Vanderworth from 118 Blades, Shay Darchant. We got co-host Albert Angleberger. I think he forgot that he's part of the podcast and he still pays us.
Yeah.
I forgot.
And we got Paul Bellette from Bellette Handmade Knives.
You forgot. You fucked one up. Do it correctly.
Who's that?
Push the fucking button.
I don't have the button anymore.
What the fuck? Really? You liar.
Shay Darchant. Oui?
That's perfect.
Yeah, so
Every
Coy
time.
probably has no idea what that is. That was Ben Camone reading off one of our Patreon members because he does the French accent a whole lot better than I can.
Aha, I gotcha.
Pretty cool.
And next week we'll have Coy Baker on the list with us.
Sweet, sweet.
We always ask every guest to be a patron. Shamelessly.
That's fine. I'll be a patron.
Nice.
Let's do it.
Sweet. Send you the link.
Do y'all do
All
an
right, so
after show?
This is one big
No.
after show. This was one of the most decent episodes ever. Really.
Awesome. Cool. Well, when does this actually air then?
Tuesday next week.
Nice.
So for anybody who doesn't know who Coy is,
Get
Where
the
can we
fuck out
find
of here
you?
if you don't know who he is.
We like to make steel. That's who we are. Steel makers.
all right, guys. Then thanks again, Coy, for coming on the show and sharing all your wisdom with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks again, guys, for having me. It was a blast, and I'm down whenever you need a guest. Hit me up. I'll jump on.
Perfect.
Nice.
Thank you. Cool.
All right, we will.
And I'm gonna message you about the copper thing.
Yes,
Quite.
I will. I gotta find that sheet. But as soon as I do, hit me a message, and I'll email it to you.
Thank you.
All right, guys, we will talk to you again next week. Bye.
Bye, fucks.
Bye.